motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Not but a day or so ago, I caught a video of Unified Super Bantamweight champion Ellie Scotney working the mitts with Unified Bantamweight champion Dina Thorsland, two fighters I've talked about in the past as being on a collision course, though at that time, I didn't realize that they would both end up signing to MVP. That is, I knew about Dina, but I didn't know Ellie would. Wasn't even aware she had entered free agency, let alone that she would end up leaving Matchroom for MVP. That one really threw me for a loop and thereby increases the chances that these two might one day fight. Oh, yes. They're both currently on their respective Undisputed runs. Ellie shooting for Undisputed at 122. Dina shooting for Undisputed at 118. I think that Ellie's Undisputed run is a bit more difficult. It's a bit harder. She's about to lock horns with the longest reigning champion at this weight, Yamileth Mercado, who has shown both longevity and resilience. Champion for over 5 years. Durable and battle-tested. Never been knocked out, never been stopped, and has successfully defended the green and gold several times. If Ellie wins that fight, and I think she's going to, she then has to face a dangerous puncher in Nazarena Romero. That is, if Nazarena can keep her WBA title beyond the Mayeli Flores fight, which is not an easy assignment. Talk about that in another video. I think the road to Undisputed is a bit more perilous for Ellie than it is for Dina, mostly because I think Dina mops the floor with Sharita Metcalf. Nothing against Sharita, because Dina's dealt with outside fighters like Sharita many times already and always come out on top, always dominated. Against the 40-year-old Sharita Metcalf, I don't think Sharita's going to be able to keep her off. I think she's going to beat Sharita, and when she does, she will then have to face Shernika Johnson, who I think is a bit better, more durable, battle-tested in her own right, but not as talented as Dina. Both Shernika and Dina are two-weight champions. What's going to separate them is the subtleties, the little things, the nuances, and I think Dina has more of that than Sharita. I like Dina's chances to become undisputed a bit more than I like Ellie's, though ultimately, I think they can both pull it off. I think they can both do it. And I think they can both do it before this year is out. On the schedule that they're on right now, that they're both going straight into unification matches for their MVP debut in July. That leaves all of the fall and all of the winter to schedule undisputed title fights, undisputed matches, but of both of them. With the money that MVP pays, with Netflix behind them, it's conceivable we could see two new undisputed champions crowned this calendar year. The fight between Ellie and Dina, that would be for next year. I just love them both so much. I almost don't want them to fight, but it does seem like they're on a collision course. It makes sense. If Dina's undisputed at 118 and Ellie's undisputed at 122, it's only right that the two undisputed champions fight. Who would win? Honestly, I don't know. They're both adaptable. They're both malleable fighters, crafty fighters, smart fighters. Maybe what'll separate them is power. Dina is a power puncher. Dina's good for a knockdown and, in some instances, a knockout. Whereas Ellie is more finesse than ferocity. Doesn't land with the same authority as Dina. And it also helps Dina that she has fought at 122 before. She reigned as WBO champion there for some time before moving down to 118. So if she were to move up for Ellie, she wouldn't be in unfamiliar territory. We don't need to wonder if Dina can hang at 122. We know she can because she already did. I would go as far as saying that this is arguably one of the top 5, maybe even the top 3 fights to make in women's boxing because they're both that good. And with most valuable promotions promoting them for the foreseeable future, a lot of people are going to find that out. They may have already seen Ellie here and there on Matchroom shows. It's Dina they need to get acquainted with, making the Sharita Metcalf fight of some significance, not just because it's a unification match, but because it could serve as the launch pad for the rest of Dina Thorsland's career. If she can go in there and stop Sharita, for a lot of people, this is going to be the first time they see Dina in action. I anticipate this is going to be a repeat
of the Yuli Hang Luna fight that Dina dominated, except Sharita is a lot older than Yuli Hang Luna was when Dina fought her. Dina and Yuli Hang are the same age, whereas Sharita, she's 40.
Do you think that's a bit ageist?
What do you want me to do, sugarcoat it? This is boxing. This is the hurt business, and in a hurt business, age matters.
Yuli Hang Luna fought the same kind of fight that Sharita Metcalf always fights, and it wasn't enough to keep Dina off of her, and Yuli Hang is both younger and more durable than Sharita. Thus, thinking about that fight, I think it's a fight Dina can definitely win. It's a fight she can dominate, and if she can score 1 or 2 knockdowns or better, knock out Sharita Metcalf, that'll make a big splash. Big enough that her versus Ellie Scotney will become a conversation and ultimately a hot-button topic. So, while it's still early, it would seem that Dina and Ellie are on a collision course, and what they have to do is hold up their end of the bargain until such a time as the two undisputed champions can fight, because I think they're both going to become undisputed this year.
How is it a duck if Dmitry Bivol is going to fight Arthur Beterbiev?
The duck, out of question. Get throw that shit out of here. Beterbiev or Bivol, they're not ducking nobody.
Duck usually means that you don't want the fight at all. A duck means you're going to take on a lesser opponent in your next fight. Dmitry Bivol is ducking Benavidez to fight Arthur Beterbiev?
A monster.
I
The second fight
understand,
wasn't easy, guys. The second fight was tough.
Sobering takes from both Dan Canobio and Chris Algieri. I almost couldn't believe my ears. I've grown accustomed to hearing so many bad boxing takes from the Americans that this
was a breath of fresh air.
because there's absolutely no reason to believe that Dmitry Bivol is ducking David Benavidez by fighting Artur again, as if Artur was a walk in the park the first 2 times. Artur has a bigger knockout percentage than David Benavidez over bigger men.
Some of which, at least one of which, David has fought, where Artur Beterbiev dispatched Alexander Vozdik. Many years later, David fights an older version of that same fighter, and he couldn't put him away. He couldn't hurt him, couldn't even hurt his feelings.
So what the hell is supposed to make David a more dangerous fight for Dmitry than Artur? What, that David couldn't knock out Caleb Plant, couldn't knock out Vozdik, and couldn't knock out David Morrell? That's what's supposed to make him more dangerous?
That he doesn't knock people out as much as Artur Beterbiev? There's nothing on paper, and nothing I've seen with my own 2 eyes, that would suggest David is a more dangerous fight.
But then what is it that Dan Canobio and Chris Algieri are addressing? Why do they feel it necessary to say this is not a duck?
Because that is what some are trying to call it, and it would seem that the World Boxing Council is helping to propagate that narrative.
When Mauricio Suleiman comes out and says that all he made from the Beterbiev fight was $2.7 million as opposed to the 8 that he was just offered to fight David, what do you think he's doing? Why do you think he's saying that? He wants me and you to believe that Dmitry is ducking David.
Problem with that strategy is that nobody with 2 functioning brain cells believes that.
Because there is nothing on paper and nothing I've seen with my own 2 eyes that would suggest Artur is an easier fight than David.
Artur is already a more accomplished fighter than David Benavidez, who has taken more belts from more reigning champions than David ever has.
Took the WBC title from Vozdik, the WBO title from Joe Smith, and lest we forget, on at least one occasion, he took the WBA from Dmitry. They're 1-1 with each other.
How does David's CV stack up with that? Who did David ever beat for a belt?
The only time that David has taken a belt from a reigning champion was when he took the WBC from Anthony Durrell. And the only reason Anthony had it was because David got stripped.
After which, Anthony Durrell picked it up, then David won it back. Is that the crown jewel of David Benavidez's resume? A win over Anthony Durrell?
No, it's the decision win over Caleb Plant, who he couldn't knock out. Do you think that Caleb Plant would be able to go the distance with Artur? Because he went the distance with David.
Couldn't go the distance with Canelo. I don't think he'd go the distance with Artur, but he did go the distance with David. And this is supposed to make him more dangerous.
The somersaults, the backflips, the mental gymnastics these people are using to keep David on a pedestal have just hit a wall, because you're not going to convince anyone who pays attention or anyone with 2 functioning brain cells that fighting Artur is the path of least resistance compared to fighting David. David, who got knocked down in his last fight by a guy with 11 fights?
Please.
And at the very most, it's a smear campaign. And it's a smear campaign that the World Boxing Council, for whatever reason, is helping Team Benavidez with.
The problem is, very few people take Mauricio Suleiman at his word. What's his credibility with the boxing community at large?
His Excellency went out and made the rematch when he didn't have to. And part of that deal was, if we win, there'll be a third fight for Artur Beterbiev. So I was very surprised at the speed of the order. Don't forget, Dimitri Bivol had only just won the WBC title.
Stout observation from Eduardo. Consider that Sebastian Fundora has been WBC champion for a full year without any pressure from the WBC to satisfy his mandatory challenger, Virgil Ortiz, who's been interim champion as of last year.
August.
And you didn't stand in the way of Sebastian Fundora fighting a voluntary in Cordell Booker a few weeks ago, so why are you pestering Dimitri?
Why didn't you give him the grace that you just gave Sebastian Fundora?
You always get grace as a champion. It wasn't like this was ordered way back and, Benavidez has been waiting. He only just beat Morel, and it's like, right, boom. Negotiations, boom, purse bid.
Exactly. The WBC is not known for ordering fights in a timely fashion. They never ordered the Adames versus Jermall Charlo fight, for example, and Adames was waiting for a long time.
In the end, they never got around to it. So why were they so Johnny on the spot with Dimitri, where they're not Johnny on the spot with anybody else?
Boom. Telling people the public offer. I mean, when has there ever been a time where, someone from the organisation is publicly telling about the offer that Dimitri Bivol would receive? It's quite bizarre, actually. And it's like trying to put pressure on him to take the fight.
I wouldn't even call it pressure on Dimitri to take the fight so much as a smear campaign, because they knew he wouldn't take the fight. They knew he was committed to a Better Beef trilogy, so they tried to use that against him.
They knew that Turkey was committed to doing a Better Beef trilogy.
Knowing that, they put all of this stuff out there to make it seem like Dimitri is running from David, like he's scared, like he's turning down more money for less money.
So people can call him a duck.
The money's nowhere near the money that he's going to make to fight Beterbiev, but it doesn't matter if the offer was 20 million. We have a contract, and we also have our word, which is our bond, which we don't ever go against. And we will be taking the third fight, and we will be fighting with His Excellency because he's given Dimitri the greatest opportunity. And by the way, in my opinion, and it's very difficult for Maurizio and the WBC because you're under a huge amount of pressure from all different parties pushing and,
I disagree with that assertion. The WBC wasn't under any pressure to do what they did because I've seen them on many, many occasions leave fighters waiting in limbo for their world title opportunities. They kept Kenya Enriquez waiting for over 3 years.
For her shot at Yesenia Gomez, and in the end, she never even got it because they never ordered it.
Technically, Carlos Adames never got his shot at Jermall Charlo. He got a vacant title instead because they never ordered it. So, pressure.
They didn't do what they did because they felt they were under pressure. They did what they did because they're on the take.
Brown paper bag money. Sampson is likely giving Mauricio kickbacks to run this smear campaign to make his fighter look good. That's why he did what he did, not because he's under pressure. That fat bastard does whatever he wants.
Irrespective of what's right and wrong.
It's very important that the greatest fights in the sport are allowed, and they supersede sometimes a mandatory obligation. For me, Bivol Beterbiev is the greatest fight in the division. We've seen two of the best fights I've ever seen. Why wouldn't you allow the third?
Collusion. Mauricio Suleiman is colluding with Samson Lukowicz and David Benavidez. Corruption is the short answer. Now, Eddie Hearn is not at liberty to make statements like that about the World Boxing Council publicly, but I can, and I will.
Eddie can't do that because then the World Boxing Council could go after him for defamation.
The reason I can make such claims with impunity is because that's just what I think. If you want to know what I think, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, the reason Mauricio was so Johnny on the spot with this order, where he was a lot more laxed with others, is because of corruption. Though crowning a champion this way
Yields very little value, holds very little sway with the boxing community at large. You can go ahead and email him a title. Email him too. See who gives a damn.
without the opponents to add meaning to those belts that you love to mass produce, it really isn't worth much. The most valuable fight to a David Benavidez in the light heavyweight division is a Dimitri Bivol fight.
It's not simply because he's got some belts, he's got some titles. It's what he had to go through to get them that adds value.
To get them, to defend them against Canelo, against Zerto, to unify them against Artur, to lose one, then win them all. That's where the value is.
Not in the email that you sent David letting him know that he was the new WBC light heavyweight champion, what some like to call in this era an email champion. In the old days, we called guys like David paper champions.
He's a paper champion because the title was manufactured. He never won it from Dimitri.
But how could he? Dimitri's fighting Artur.
Boo-hoo-hoo that David Benavidez, who only has 2 fights at light heavyweight, might have to wait.
Goodness me.
Guy's been here 2 fights, a grand total of 2 fights where Dimitri Bivol has paid his dues for years as a defending champion who beat Canelo Alvarez, the face of boxing, and beat Zerto Ramirez, who's now a unified cruiserweight champion, beat Artur Beterbiev for Undisputed. Do you hear yourself?
God forbid that David should have to wait.
And wait just one more fight, just one more, and he would have got his crack at the apple. The fact of the matter is, David wasn't supposed to be next in the rotation that the World Boxing Council seems to abide by in most every other weight class except this one. Because in this one,
You tried to cut ahead in the line. Why? Is it because Samson paid you?
gave you a little something off the top to push through that order, push it through faster than normal.
That's what it looks like.
So listen, you can send David as many emails as you want. Give him as many versions of your title as you want. That title by itself don't sell the fights. It's the fights that sell the fights. And without the opponents,
The title ain't worth much.
and I'd be surprised, I'd be damn surprised if David actually sticks around in this division long enough to defend it. Because without the opponents, he can't make any money.
He's already made it clear that he doesn't want to go to Saudi, in which case, I don't know how him and his team expect this fight to happen. Maybe it's because they don't expect this fight to happen.
Maybe it's because they don't want this fight to happen, which is what I've been saying all along.